Your parents bought their first home in their mid-20s, maybe earlier. They probably had a decent job, nothing special, maybe one income between two people, and somehow they saved up, put down a deposit, and bought a house. You have a degree, you work full-time, you budget, you don't go out that much. You've watched every how to save money video on this platform, and you still can't afford a house. So what happened? Was your parents' generation just better with money? Were they tougher? Did they work harder? No, the game changed, and nobody told you. Let's talk about what actually happened, because the numbers are genuinely shocking. In 1980, the average house in the United States cost around 2.5 times the average annual salary. 2.5 times. Meaning, if you earned decent money, you could realistically save up and buy a home within a few years. Today, the average house costs more than 5 times the average annual salary. In cities like Los Angeles, New York, or San Francisco, we're talking 10 to 15 times. Let that actually land for a second. Your parents needed to save roughly 2.5 years of their salary to buy a home. You need to save 5 years of yours, minimum, in a major city, closer to 10. And that's before you factor in the fact that wages haven't kept up with inflation, before student loans, before the cost of living increase that's made just surviving month to month harder than it ever was for the generation before you. This isn't about avocado toast. This isn't about lattes. This is a structural problem that started decades before you were born, and you're the one paying for it. So how did we get here? It started in the 1970s and 80s. Governments in the US, UK, and Australia started loosening the rules around property investment. Suddenly, buying a second house, a third house, 10 houses, became not just allowed, but actively encouraged through tax breaks and incentives. What that did was turn housing into a financial asset, something people bought not to live in, but to profit from. When that happened, demand for housing didn't just come from people who needed a place to live anymore. It came from investors, from corporations, from pension funds, from hedge funds buying up entire streets of homes to rent back to the very people who can't afford to buy them. By the time you entered the housing market, you weren't just competing against other people your age who needed a home. You were competing against multi-billion-dollar investment funds with virtually unlimited capital. And it gets worse. Most cities in the Western world have strict zoning laws that make it illegal to build enough housing to meet demand. Not enough apartments, not enough medium-density housing. The rules were written when property owners, the people who vote in local elections, had every incentive to keep supply low and prices high. More houses means lower property values for people who already own. So the people who already own vote against more houses being built. And because they vote in higher numbers than renters, politicians listen to them. You were priced out before you even started saving. Here's the part that really stings. Because housing prices have gone up so dramatically, the people who bought homes 30 or 40 years ago have made extraordinary amounts of money without doing anything. Your parents' generation didn't just buy a place to live. They accidentally became wealthy. The average homeowner in the United States has seen their home value increase by hundreds of thousands of dollars since the 1990s. Not because they worked harder. Not because they were smarter. Just because they were born at the right time and bought a house. That wealth gets passed down. It becomes the deposit that helps their kids buy. It becomes the inheritance that gives the next generation a head start. And if your parents didn't buy a house, if they rented their whole lives, you don't get that head start. You start the race from behind. And the gap between people who inherited property wealth and people who didn't is now one of the biggest drivers of inequality in the Western world. This is why it feels like the system is rigged. Because in a very real way, it is. Not through any conspiracy, just through decades of policy decisions that protected existing wealth, at the expense of everyone who came after. Let's be honest about something else too. Your parents' generation graduated with less student debt. In many cases, none at all. University was cheap, sometimes free. The cost of education has increased by over 500% since the 1980s in real terms, while the value of a degree in the job market has barely moved. They entered a job market with more stable, long-term employment, defined benefit pensions, jobs that lasted decades, careers that paid you more the longer you stayed. You entered a gig economy, 0-hours contracts, internships that pay nothing, jobs that disappear when a company decides to restructure, a job market that asks for 5 years' experience for entry-level positions. They had lower taxes as a percentage of income, lower energy costs, lower food costs relative to wages, lower transport costs, a healthcare system that hadn't been stretched to its limits. Every single financial pressure you face today is larger than the one your parents faced at the same age. Every single one. And yet, the conversation in the media, from politicians, from older generations, is still about whether young people are trying hard enough. So, what do you actually do with this information? First, stop blaming yourself. Genuinely. The housing crisis is not the result of your personal financial failures. It is the result of policy decisions made over 50 years by people who are no longer affected by those decisions. Understanding that is not making excuses. It is being accurate. Second, the people who are buying homes right now in this market are largely doing it through 3 ways. Parental help with a deposit, buying in lower cost areas and commuting or working remotely, or buying with a partner and combining incomes. None of those options are available to everyone, and that's not a personal failing. That's just the reality of the market. Third, and this is the harder truth, building wealth in your generation might not look like it did for your parents. It might be investments. It might be building something online. It might be buying property in a different country. The path your parents took is genuinely harder to replicate, and that means finding new paths. That's not a comfortable message, but it's an honest one. Your parents didn't have it easy. They worked hard. They made sacrifices. But they also played a game with different rules. And the sooner we stop pretending that the rules haven't changed, the sooner we can have an honest conversation about what it actually takes to build a life in this economy. You're not failing. The system changed around you, while everyone kept telling you the old rules still applied. If this hit close to home, drop a comment. I want to know where you're at with this. Are you trying to buy? Have you given up? Did you find a way through? And if you know someone going through this, send it to them. Sometimes just knowing the problem is real, and it's not just you, makes a difference. Subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.